So Chris, first of all, welcome. You run some very interesting events, things like car design dialogues, where you're going into literally the design studio. You're looking at concept cars from some of the biggest names in the industry. How have things changed for you during this past 6 months to a year?
Yeah, well, first, thanks, Ralph. And I mean, it's interesting you raise car design dialogues, because in fact, that is itself a pandemic disruption, innovation. If we take car design news, which is one of the automotive brands that we run here at Ultima Media, our event business was largely, it was like centered around the global motor show circuit. So your Genevas, your LAs, your Detroits, etc. Networking, sometimes conferences in and around them. So the product, if you like, was already on display. That's kind of the nature of the show, and the world comes to it. Obviously, I mean, we can have a whole separate conversation about motor shows and what might happen with them in future, but clearly they were severely disrupted, and our ability to deliver anything like that with it. We pivoted pretty quickly to things like live stream webinars, where we were kind of broadcasting weekly and in a kind of very much do it at home, do it yourself kind of manner. But when we got to the concept of a digital event specifically for car design news, we did feel we needed to offer our audience more. The design community, without having to state the obvious, cares a lot about the visuals, about the product itself. A lot of that is created digitally, but the feeling, touching, seeing the product is still so important. We still wanted to deliver that even in a digital format. And so we actually created the design dialogue format, in which we follow, if you like, virtually the car makers into their studio, where they'll do live design reviews of the product themselves, or in the studio with the concepts nearby, just being able in some cases to look and touch and feel and point.
Yeah, I didn't know that car design dialogues was actually a format that you've created because of the pandemic. That's fascinating. I mean, you're sat there with a green screen behind you. What has been your experience of, I mean, you also built a small media presenter studio in your office. What's that experience been like?
Yeah, and as I sort of mentioned, so when we were disrupted, like everyone, back in March, and we kind of quickly jumped on this sort of almost like a weekly schedule of webinars and live streams and stuff. And if I look back at those early ones, I mean, they were really grainy with a webcam off my laptop, which is quite damaged, if I'm honest. But it was what we had and what we were using. My bookshelf in the background, like every pretentious journalist in the world and stuff like that. So that served its purpose in March and April, and I don't think we got too many complaints for it. But we did want to move forward. We needed to up the quality of what we were doing, and so hope you don't mind me saying, I don't think you will. Thanks to some of your help, Ralph, we were able to, to construct a pretty simple but effective little studio with much better, higher webcam, with a good green screen, understanding how the key technology works with a light and mic, and it didn't take much. I mean, it was a kind of a couple £100 pounds. We convert that to dollar, right? $700-800 kind of investment. We do want to look at other opportunities for TV studios, whether that's working with external partners to do that, or maybe even in future building more of our own. But again, this as another version of do it yourself worked really well for us and took us to that next level, I think.
When you think of hybrid, I mean, you were doing live streaming before actually this happened. You've told us that you've created this new format. What does hybrid mean to you, and what does the future look like?
We're in kind of two businesses which were severely disrupted even before the pandemic. So, obviously we had print products which were on the decline. We had, obviously struggling to convert to digital media in some parts of our business. And the automotive industry has its own disruptions to deal with. Events were for us the kind of lifeline for many years. They were the thing that we turned to, and we kind of, were our bread and butter. And I think, I see those still playing a key role in the future, but we were probably too much drop into a market, put on an event and sort of leave. Although we had some content around it, it definitely wasn't all speaking to the audience and communities there. It wasn't building them up and sustaining that in a way that now this virtual format's, forcing us to do, not just with our events, but also with our other content. We're making them all speak to one another, reflect on one another, build off and things like that. And in the future, regardless of what format exactly we use for hybrid, because we can see a number of different ways for that, I think think that aspect will and needs to continue. So we're creating kind of research reports that are then influencing our events or coming out of our events and things like that. Obviously, articles, interviews, TV-like programs, and other things like that. So to me, that's probably the key bit that we'll take going forward. In terms of the actual format, naturally we'll want to use the kind of TV stuff that we've learned, if you like, in terms of how we've done it, instead of just maybe broadcasting the stage. I think there's also scope, of course, to use the kind of networking tools which come from the digital side. You know, some of the kind of matchmaking aspects, some of the ways to organize meetings, which we didn't have in our physical events before. We just let it happen organically, partly because we were probably afraid or didn't understand the technology to introduce in. So bringing aspects like that in will be interesting. Our live events depended on an experience, a great dinner, a great sort of speaker coming in, a while, some memory that lasted, and we want that equally to reverberate in the digital space and in the hybrid space as we go forward.
Fantastic. Well, Christopher, I think that new format, for me, when I saw you were interviewing Volvo in their design studio, and it was just a whole other level of experience. I think you hit the nail on the head there. I remember things like that.